Good morning, and welcome back to our third episode here of Bang Bang Anonymous. For those of you that have been listening in already, thanks for joining again. If you're new, please do smash that like button and subscribe. Just want to chat a little bit this morning about kind of post-holidays. I am actually getting ready to head to Europe for almost 2 months, and exciting trip. Been meaning to travel to Europe for many years now. Just haven't pulled the trigger for a number of reasons, but I fly out on January 8th, going to meet up with a friend in the UK, him and his wife, and spend some time with them. But equally as exciting, while I'm in Europe, first or second week of February, I'm actually going to be starting with a new company. So my background, I've been in life sciences and like biotech, drug development, recruiting for the past 8 years, and have been with the last company that I was with for almost 5.5 years. My boss there and the CEO there was a mentor and much like a brother to me. So that was a big change. But it was one that was kind of a long time coming. I'd started to get restless in the sense that I was ready to be challenged again. I was ready to learn, to be exposed to new ideas, things like that. So in February, I'll be starting with a new company that I was actually introduced to from a good friend and someone whose company I'd actually interviewed with much earlier in the year 2023. So cool story there. But as I was thinking this morning, and I can't do this enough, man. Shout out to David Goggins and Rich Roll, both of them. I was re-listening to the beginning of that podcast after Goggins's book had just been released, and he went on the Rich Roll podcast, and just even the very first 5, maybe 10 minutes of that podcast is just such gold. Those two guys in general, right? I mean, Rich Roll, in my opinion, is one of the most gifted interviewers out there, just period. And then David Goggins, that energy that he brings, anyone that knows me knows that I sort of live by some of his mantras in terms of where I try to get myself in mindset, right? And that's kind of where I'm going with this. I was meditating this morning, and I remember in my own recovery journey, when I was just getting sober, I was introduced to meditation, and then through one of the apps, actually the Fit Mind app, which is a really neat, very neuroscience-y meditation guided app. It sort of teaches you from a very practical standpoint how to meditate. Now, disclaimer, I've gone on Vedic meditation retreats, and I have a Vedic meditation practice that I follow pretty regimentedly daily, and it's not a substitute for those things, right? Going and having a meditation teacher or a guru that kind of walks you through the mechanics of meditating, right? Both practically and in terms of enlarging your spiritual life, right? So at any rate, this app, the Fit Mind app, which I think is a really cool way to get into meditation, for any of you that are interested, this app had a Stoic meditation where it quite literally just from Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, several others that I'm not going to think about right now, it would just mention the quote from whichever Stoic philosopher they were pulling from at the moment, and they would say, just reflect on the words of Marcus Aurelius, and they would say the quote. And some of those quotes have stuck with me to this day, right? I remember being in an interview 2 or 3 years ago, and I was asked what my favorite quote is. And it may still be the same, but it was along the lines of, it was a very well-known Marcus Aurelius quote about basically not future tripping, right? And this is kind of in that whole idea of bulletproofing our mindset, right? And this is something that has changed the way I think, right? There's a lot of talk in AA specifically about psychic change and thinking patterns and rewiring those. Actually, a good friend of mine just suggested that I read Think Again by Adam Grant, along the same lines, right? He's an organizational psychologist who specializes in rethinking, assumptions or things that we thought were sort of absolutes, right? So anyway, in this mindset, the quote from Marcus Aurelius goes something like this. He says, "Do not worry about the future. You will come to it, if you must, armed with the same weapons of reason that now protect you against the present," right? Don't worry about the future. You'll come to it if you have to, right? And when you come to that future thing that maybe in the moment you were about to future trip out on, you're gonna have the same wherewithal, right? The same wit, the same reason, those same things that defend you against the present right now, you're still going to be just as capable, right? You're still going to have that weaponry at your disposal. And that, to me, that's the quote that I offered in that interview when I was asked what my favorite quote was. And it's still a top three, if not my favorite. I still think about it from time to time. And I think about the impact that it had on my life, where, just yesterday, and I was talking to my meditation teacher about this, just yesterday, I was reflecting on how a few times in the last few weeks, my excitement about this new job has started to sort of bleed over into that category of future tripping, right? Where, yeah, I'm thrilled to get up and running, and I'm going to be building a market and an office for this company here in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is an area that they don't have a sort of well-defined market yet. They've got offices across the U.S. and they're a UK-based organization, and there's all these exciting things, right? But then on the other side of that, there's like, I've talked a good game to get myself into this position where I'm now going to be expected to produce for them, right? To bring in accounts, to generate revenue, right? And very quickly my mind starts to shift into like, oh man, that's gonna be tough. Like, am I gonna be able to, do the things that I said I was gonna do? Am I gonna be able to realize success in the way that I want to be able to realize success? Am I gonna, right? I'm already down that sort of, the rabbit hole of like, how is that gonna play out, right? I'm trying to so I guess my point is this, right? It's not that we don't have ambitions, right? We don't shy away from setting goals, but at a certain point, and this is what quotes like that do for me. They help me remember that you put in the work, right? You put forth the fucking effort. You implement the systems. And then after that, you kind of have to trust the process, right? Like, you kind of have to be able to let go of it until that moment comes, right? Like, the work that I'm doing as I've had this time off has been very much about mindset, about, and again, the beginner's mind is a lot of what I'm referring to when I'm talking about mindset, right? I talk about bulletproofing our mindsets with these stoic sort of realist quotes, and that keep us grounded in the present moment, right? Because that's all we've got. And I'm a big believer in that, right? Like, my mentors, the folks that sort of guided me over these last few years to where I'm at now, are that, one of the just end all is like, hey, present moment, only moment, right? Like, I don't exist 15 minutes from now, and I fucking don't exist 15 minutes ago, right? So learn from that, and learn from when my mind tries to wander off and carry me into that future moment that may or may not happen, and may or may not happen as my mind is telling me that it certainly will happen. So when I think about that, when I think about the idea of bulletproofing our mindset, what I'm really talking about is work that we can do to keep ourselves present. The books like Atomic Habits, right? The books like Think Again. Another one that comes to mind, and I was chatting with the friend Hannah who recommended to me the Think Again by Adam Grant. Another one in that sort of same category is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, who I believe is also maybe not an organizational psychologist, but something very closely intertwined in that field. And he deals a lot with like statistical psychology, and realizing what our mind might have us believe based on cultural norms or sociological conditioning versus what statistics or numbers or maybe logic or reason, if you want to go kind of down that path, what that might tell us. So just back to my point, in this last few months, as I've had some downtime, right? I've had, I resigned my last position in November. It's now the end of December. We're coming up on the new year, and I don't start my new position until February. That's the most time off. It's the most time away from work that I've had since like before high school, right? Like, I've always had a job. I've always been an active contributor to the workforce, and that's not a complaint, but it was also one of those things. It's like, okay, what am I going to do to keep myself busy, right? How can I best use this time? Okay, well, I'm going to travel some, right? I'm going to go to Europe. That's fair. I've decided to get on, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, starting a podcast or a YouTube channel or writing a book, things like that, things that are creative based, right? Content based, where I can start to have a dialogue with whomever, right? Those were all things that were on my list. So that was something that I ticked the box. I've mentioned before as well that like I was kind of researching long-term investment, right? Trying to get smart with like how to like start to plan for years and years and years down the line, which is sort of what led me down the rabbit hole of like, okay, here's a good idea. For like, side income, and more specifically like, hey, if you've ever thought about launching a YouTube channel, here are some tips on that, right? Same Ali Abdal. So it's one of those things where this past few months I've had that time to to work on mindset, to work on what I want the next year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years to look like. And again, I'm a big believer that I don't control those outcomes, but I absolutely believe that through discipline and through consistency, that I do control the development of those systems, right? Those atomic habits, those little things that over the course of a week, a month, a year, those habits that are coming from a place of discipline, right? Those are what determine not just the quality of the lives that we lead, but in many ways the success, right? And again, I'm not here to tell anyone what success looks like versus what failure looks like. And I don't believe necessarily that failure is failure in the common sense of the word. I think that, our missteps are nothing but lessons, right? Not an original thought, but one I'm very pleased to have sort of wrapped my mind around in recent years, right? Like there's this prevailing logic, especially from a spiritual sense, from a meditative sense, from a yogic sense, that there are no throwaway moments, right? Like nothing in this universe happens by chance, and that strikes me here. The first time I heard that, I didn't make a whole lot of sense of it, right? It didn't register as logical to me, and again, I think that's a testament now, sitting here saying that and knowing what it means to me now, back to that sort of change in thinking, right? Like, neuroplasticity is a thing, right? Like we have this ability by way of atomic habits, by tiny atomic changes in the things that we do and the way that we look at situations when approached. We have this ability to change our thinking, right? Our neurological biochemistry, right? So those are all really interesting topics to me. And I guess where I was going with this, if anything, is that this time has been a good time for me of reflection, of planning, and most importantly, I think of really getting serious about the types of systems that I want to see carry me to wherever it is I'm supposed to go in 2024, right? I mean, we're right upon the new year now. I've felt very good about this time away. When going into it, frankly, I was a bit terrified. Like I said, I haven't been away from work for this long in a long time, and certainly I think I've fallen into that category of those who sort of more than they should define themselves by their work, right? By what they're producing at the office, right? By the type of income they're able to generate, by the type of revenue that they're able to generate for a given organization, right? So I've certainly, over the course of my career, fallen into that category more than I think was healthy. And again, I'm not here to tell someone or to even suggest that I know for myself what degree is healthy, right? Like how much should you be invested in your career versus the other thing. I will say this. I heard a quote, and this is something that stuck with me as well, that you should work on yourself, right? You should invest in yourself. You should work to improve yourself equally as hard, if frankly not more so than you do at your job, right? Like work on yourself as hard as you work on your job. And I can say very confidently that in this last few years, that's been a reality for me. And it's not to say that I'm any less driven, that my ambitions have sort of faded or diminished or lessened, because they haven't. I still have big dreams, and I think that working on myself in parallel with my going after the achievement of those dreams and those goals and those ambitions, it hasn't been this black and white thing, right? It hasn't been this thing where I'm just so wrapped up and like, okay, right now I'm working on myself and then I'm gonna pivot and then I'm gonna work on my career. Like, no, this shit's all connected, right? It's all connected. But make no mistake, if you're not intentional, if you're not conscious, and this is for me, if I'm not intentional, if I'm not conscious about that decision to be working on myself when I'm working on myself, then those benefits that absolutely bleed over into the success that I may achieve in my career, they may be lessened, right? Like they may not be as profound. I may not reap the rewards of that internal work, right? Of that self-improvement so much in my career or in any other facet of life if I'm not very, intentional about the work, right? So The other thing that I'll touch on just briefly before I wrap up is just how fucking excited I am about the marathon training, right? I'm going to be gone in Europe for 2 months, as I mentioned, for the better part of both January and February, a little less than 2 months. And while I'm there, I'll be running. The past 3 weeks in a row now, I've been above 30 miles a week, which for me, having never been a long distance runner and not really, only just this year sort of dipping my toe into the waters of endurance sport, right? Via a triathlon earlier this year, a sprint triathlon. So for me, getting that mileage up and getting into this routine or rhythm of knocking out, 6 runs on average a week, and then also, sort of augmenting that with some cross training, right? So still hitting the gym 3-4 times a week to do some heavy lifting, still getting a session of mountain biking in throughout the week, still, playing basketball here and there, still playing pickup soccer on the weekends, right? So like that 6 sort of core runs to include a long run. Last week was my first time completing a half marathon distance. I did 13.2-ish miles, and so just getting to this point now where I am very much enjoying the process of building a base and training for this marathon. And just last night, I was talking to my buddy Kevin, who you guys have heard me shout out on this channel before. We were chatting about my bigger goal, which is to do a full Ironman in 2025. And he was like, well, let's just do it now, right? Let's just do it tomorrow, right? Because that's how he is. And then he and I kind of feed off that energy for one another. But in all seriousness, over Thanksgiving, 2 of my good friends, my sister's neighbors, who are also who've both done Ironmans and had some advice they were talking to me about, because I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina, but I spent a good part of my life in Wilmington, North Carolina, which is where Beach to Battleship is. And that's one of the Ironman now sponsored Ironman triathlons that at one point was kind of its own thing, right? It was a full Ironman, but it wasn't like a branded Ironman event. It now is. However, after the first year that Ironman purchased it, and this is kind of just hearsay, I haven't researched this thoroughly, so take this with a grain of salt, but after the first year they purchased it, they took it from being a full 70.3 Ironman event to a half. Now, sensible enough that I might do a half Ironman as I sort of build up in training to do the full. So I may be looking to check that box this coming year, right, in 2024, and then in 2025 knock out a full somewhere. So yeah, the training has been going great. Actually, today I'm gonna ride my bike on the Greenway. You've seen me post a few. You've seen me post a few running clips, shorts, so to speak, from the Neuse River Trail Greenway here in Raleigh, North Carolina, in North Raleigh, where I'm located. And that trail actually connects all the way over to a little park called the Buffalo Road Athletic Park. There's a track there. There's an aquatic center. At any rate, my buddy Kevin and I are going to ride our bikes from the Greenway trailhead, the Neuse River Trail sort of entryway, to the Buffalo Road Athletic Park. Excuse me. We're going to ride our bikes from there down to the park, and that's about 12 miles. So we'll ride there, get a track workout in. Probably we'll do a mile or 2 warm up, and then get in some fly by 800s, some 400s, some 200s. Good times, and then we'll hop on the bikes and ride back. So that'll be our sort of dual sport training for the day. At any rate, I've been enjoying the process of just sort of having this outlet. Again, there's an underlying sort of belief for me that's been given to me by YouTubers galore that really just says get some content out there, right? If you want to start a channel, if you want to see which direction it goes, if you want to see what that path really holds in store, then frankly, quit fucking talking about it and get it out there. So if you're listening, I appreciate you. As I've said before, any questions or any ideas that you'd like to hear me touch upon, throw them in the comments. Until next time, Bang Bang Anonymous out. Thanks, guys.